Hey everyone, so today I'm recording a video based off ranking the teams of Total Drama, based off of how good and how bad they are. Things that will come into consideration as I rank this are their performance, their skill, whether they benefited from or were hindered from luck, and generally if they were entertaining or not. So at 13 is the Killer Grips. So there's no doubt in my mind who is dead last, and that is the Killer Grips. Technically, they won 3 challenges, so they technically shouldn't be last. But one of those wins involved Gwen heavily throwing the challenge, and even then she was barely successful at it. And the other 2 challenges, which they won, which came at the very end, were solely due to Courtney. They lost every single challenge due to their own doing, and were lucky that the elimination of Lindsay in episode 9 was cancelled because of DJ quitting. Outside of all of that, Izzy was allowed to return to their team, and Courtney was also put in their team, which gave them 2 opportunities to pad out their team and to not be obliterated. So they clearly had producer favoritism as well. Also, they were just a boring team. Nothing really happened with Justin, Beth, Lindsay, and that triangle, despite the setup being there. Owen and Izzy was nice to see together for the little bit they were together. Trent's storyline was horrible, and Courtney did bring some much needed interest to the team, but it was a bit too late. At 12 is Pimpatu Kinosewak. Hopefully I said that correctly. Alright, so I find the teams of the last 2 seasons, but specifically Pakatu Island, to be painfully forgettable, so don't mind me if I don't have much to say about any of them in comparison. So, Kinosewak actually started out strong, as they won the first 2 challenges, but after seeing everything play out, they clearly only won those 2 challenges because Leonard absolutely sucked and single-handedly dragged Maskwak down. From every episode afterwards of his boot, Team Kinosewak loses every single challenge for the remainder of the season, and they even had a switch-up with their weakest teammate, Max, being replaced by a strong competitor in Sky, and they still lost that final episode. Also, they also benefited from the episode 6 elimination round of Max being cancelled out for Ella being disqualified. And what puts them as second to last outside of that is that they are very boring as a team. Seeing Jasmine and Sammy interact was nice, but Topher didn't interact with anyone. Amy and Sammy got old very quickly. Max and Scarlett got old, despite Scarlett being entertaining on her own, and everyone else just flat out sucked. At 11 is Team Victory. Obviously, Team Victory was going to be very low on this list, and rightfully so. They were the only team to be completely dismantled before the merge, and lost most of their challenges. But look deeper. They were the only ones who actually tried to win in episode 3. Lashana technically should have been in the final round against Alejandro in episode 7. Heather was knocked out first. DJ was sabotaged in his final episode by Alejandro. They won in episode 8, and the other 2 challenges where they didn't lose was conveniently a non-elimination episode. It was clear that the producers systematically made sure that Team Victory would be wiped out, and that the other teams would remain intact. The convenient reward challenges, not doing any switches like they did every other season that wasn't the first season, and not having saviors like many of the other losing teams, has them a bit higher. Despite being very unlucky and the producers clearly rigging things against them, they still performed poorly no matter what. Lindsay was the most entertaining one on their team. DJ's storyline was horrible. The less said about Ezekiel, the better, and the rest were just used as Alejandro boot fodder. At 10 is the heroic Hamsters. So they were the quote-unquote inferior team during All-Stars, and they were more inferior in the entertainment factor, for damn sure, rather than the functionality and the performance elements of a successful team. From what we saw, most of the heroic Hamsters were obsessed with kindness, team morale, and being very cooperative, which did kind of work for them, despite losing 4 challenges. Courtney being there caused somewhat of an interesting dynamic, since she did not share the same beliefs as the others did, but it went nowhere once she was switched over, and then Duncan had his horrible plots once he was added in. And as well as the horrendous Cam Cody and the Mal stuff, there just wasn't much there, and they are arguably the most boring team ever, but they aren't the worst performance-wise. At 9 is the Toxic Rats. So, out of the inferior teams, I actually think that they're one of the stronger ones, if you look at the actual events that happened. They actually won the first challenge and went to elimination for a very stupid reason. Scott threw the challenges in episodes 3 and 5, where they would have won otherwise. They won episode 4 and 8 on their own, while genuinely losing episode 2 and 7 on their own. On paper, they look very weak, but in action, they are not as weak as their record shows. Scott's villainy throughout this portion of the season was entertaining, and seeing Dakota and Sam get together was nice, but they were not nearly as entertaining as the Mutant Maggots or many other teams on this show. They were given a lifeline when Brick was added onto their team, which was another person to pad out the team, and when Joe switched on their team, which helped them win the final challenge of the teams. At 8 are the Villainous Vultures. So, the Villainous Vultures is one of those teams that has a relatively equal ratio of winning and losing, since they won 4 challenges and lost 3 challenges. But in episode 4, they actually lost the challenge, but Chris all of a sudden conveniently cares about cheating, so it turned into a win, despite him letting the others cheat in the past. I'm assuming they did this because he wanted to spare Alejandro and to get rid of Sam. They are not a weak team, but they are not one of the strongest either. In general, they are a lot more entertaining than the heroic Hamsters, hence them doing better. But at the same time, with a team of all villains, it's a bit too chaotic. The effects of the drama is kind of left behind because everyone is trying to outscheme one another, kind of got old, and I don't think Courtney and Cameron being added onto their teams later on added much. Right in the middle at number 7 is Team Chris is really hot. I find this team to benefit quite a bit from luck, but were also screwed up by luck, so that, in addition to generally ranking second in the majority of their challenges, is why they are dead set in the middle. They blatantly ass-kissed Chris in the 3rd episode, and benefited from a convenient reward challenge in episode 5 that caused them to not eliminate someone there. Also, Alejandro had to cheat in episode 11 to avoid his team going into elimination. But the team was heavily screwed over in episode 13 because they won that challenge, but it was cancelled. They did go on a slight winning streak by the end. Regarding the entertainment factor, it was mainly Alejandro who carried the weight as he was the main villain, as Izzy was also very under the radar. Noah didn't do much before his elimination episode. Tyler was a little giggle here and there, and Owen did not become tolerable and interesting until the end of the team's run. Shockingly, Duncan made the team more interesting once he joined it, and they got better at the end, but he joined at the tail near of the end of the teams. At 6 is the Killer Bass. Out of all the quote-unquote inferior teams, the Killer Bass are clearly the strongest ones, as they only lost 2 more challenges than the Screaming Gophers, and didn't benefit from or were negatively impacted by luck, so it was all based on their own skill. As a team, they were entertaining, as Harold conflicted with Duncan and a few of the other guys. There are 2 likable romances on the team, and you really got into the threesome as friends, as well as Courtney and Bridget. Of course, the 4 earlier boots are more forgettable. They have won challenges due to great leadership, mainly shown in the 9th and 10th episodes, special skills mainly from Harold, cooperation, and DJ strength in episode 8, so they are very well-rounded in general. At number 5 is Team Amazon, the team that is clearly the quote-unquote superior team of the 3rd season, since they won a majority of the challenges and were the last team out of the 3 to lose a member. But like another team that is a bit above them, they benefited a lot from luck, a lack of logic, and things out of their control that helped them. They benefited a lot from convenient reward challenges, saving them from losing a member. This was done in episodes 8 and 10, where they were dead last in those episodes, and Chris deciding not to eliminate someone from their team, despite losing the challenge in episode 13. They also walked out of the challenge in episode 3 and were spared by Cody and Sierra doing everything. With that in mind, they clearly had producer favoritism on their side. But they did win a lot of challenges on their own merit, and they were very entertaining as a team. Whether it is Courtney and Gwen hating Heather and vice versa, Sierra hating Gwen, Courtney and Gwen hating on one another, Cody simping for Gwen, etc. They were clearly the most interesting team in that season. At number 4 are the Mutant Maggots. So this team is known for having one of the best winning streaks in the franchise, and it is true. They only lost 2 challenges in 8 episodes, which is really great, but once you break it down and look at the actual events, things are a lot more skewed. They technically lost the first episode, but the other team destroyed their cabin, making them safe instead, which was stupid. Scott threw the challenge in episode 3 and 5, while the Mutant Maggots lost in episodes 4 and 8 due to their own doing. Also, Brick intentionally decided to let go of the challenge to save Mike, Zoe, and Cameron, when the Mutant Maggots would have lost otherwise in episode 7. Take that into account, that's about half of the challenges where they either needed luck or there was a lack of logic that caused for them to win, or things outside of their control. Kind of like Team Amazon, but it's more emphasized here. Despite all of this, the Mutant Maggots were very entertaining, which does justify their spots up here. Brick and Joe had great interactions with one another. Mike, Zoe, and Anne-Maria's triangle led to some fun moments. Joe and Anne-Maria had a great feud, and even Scott was great on this team when he was placed on it. At 3 is, hopefully I say this correct, is the team Wani-Tam Maskwak. I don't have much to say about this team. Not only because I find the 2 teams of Pakatu Island to be painfully forgettable, since most of them didn't interact in general, but I don't remember them being overtly entertaining. With that in mind, they are only this high because of how much they dominated. They did lose the first 2 episodes, but that was mainly due to Leonard sucking, but never lost a challenge at all afterwards. I don't really count episode 7, and they had a very strong winning streak that was solely due to their own merits. And even when Sky, a strong competitor on their team, had to be moved to the other team in the last episode with the teams, they still won. Also, Ella was disqualified after they already won the challenge, so they lost 2 members from not normal reasons, and still performed well. Most of the more important interactions of the seasons and the more important characters came from this team, but they aren't really that entertaining, hence them being here. In second place, I have the Screaming Gophers. So the rest, quote-unquote, superior team in the franchise was always going to be high. Despite the win-to-loss ratio between them and the Killer Bass isn't large. In general, this team is mainly high because for entertainment reasons. Heather, Gwen, Lashana, Lindsay, and Enzi were very entertaining. Trent had nice moments with Gwen, and honestly, most of the men were kind of duds on this team, and the women carried this team. Despite everything, this team performed well on a majority of the challenges, and while they did lose 5 of them, you could argue that the 3 of them were due to the curse that Beth allegedly had due to the Tiki doll, since they won every single challenge after she was voted out. Despite that, the losing streak period that they had was the Screaming Gophers at their very most entertaining. At first are the Screaming Gaffers. They have to be at the very top for me for several reasons. One was that they were very entertaining, since we had the feuds of Duncan and Harold, Heather and Lashana, and Heather and Gwen for a bit, even with Duncan and Heather not liking one another. Once it got down to the foursome, it was really great, as Duncan and Heather also didn't like one another, and Lashana and Harold were a very interesting relationship. Now, regarding their strengths as a team, all 6 of them were proven to be competitors in the past and continued that in this season. They only lost 2 challenges for real, as the other one involved Gwen having to work overtime to throw the challenge. Even when DJ went home via quitting, they had already won that challenge. They clearly dominated the season, and if anything, the producers favored the killer Grips over them, so they weren't lucky either. So that is my ranking on the teams, based off their functionality, performance, and entertainment factor. I will make a bunch of other videos soon enough, and I'm looking forward to talking about different elements of the show. Thank you all.